What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Playoff Committee. I'm Chaz Messman, and today I'm joined by Nick, Naff, and Ray Belkora. Boys, it was a very, very exciting week in college football. The LSU Tigers went on the road into Austin and won. Army almost pulled off the miraculous upset in the Big House. Guys, it's going to be another great week coming up, but what are your biggest impressions from this past week?
My biggest impression is probably LSU going into Austin, putting up 45 points. They gave up 38, but Joe Burrow looked like a quarterback who could lead this team.
400 plus yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, he looked like he can take this team places, and I was actually pretty impressed with Texas too. I didn't expect them to score 38 on LSU's defense.
And the one thing we got to talk about Texas was, the 2 drop passes on 4th and goal. That really hurt them, especially the one on the very first drive. Sam Ehlinger rolls to the right, comes back to a screen on the left with his running back, hits him right in the chest.
Wide
open.
For sure,
I mean, that's 7-7.
Yep.
And that gave LSU some momentum going into the game. And, you don't want to give a Orgeron-coached team any sort of momentum because they're just going to roll with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they use that to their advantage for sure. One of my biggest takeaways from week 2 is probably how close Army got to number 7 Michigan, and how Michigan was at home, obviously in the Big House, and it was just kind of like sad to see Army run all over Michigan. I mean, coming into the game, you always know it's an Army-led team. They're always going to run the ball. You're going to get a couple passes here and there. But it was just concerning to me to see a Big Ten team like Michigan and be as dominant as they always usually are, almost lose in overtime to Army.
Yeah, and for Army, what surprised me is they lost this game on coaching.
Oh, yeah.
And Army's usually one of the best coached teams in the entire country, coming off 2 back-to-back 10-win seasons. Those 2 pass plays, they got away with what they do, and, the triple option in that whole thing, running the ball up the gut, downhill football, the interception in the red zone, and then the fumble during overtime, and it Hopkins is a good quarterback, but he's not, he's not a thrower. He's a triple option quarterback.
Yeah.
They got away with what they do. Missed field goal as time expires. And, Michigan is too talented of a team to make mistakes against.
Yeah, and if you remember last year when Army took Oklahoma to overtime, this was a very different game because in this game, Army's defense held the Michigan offense pretty well throughout the game, and that's got to be alarming if you're a Wolverine fan, especially headed into the Big Ten, which is known for defense, low-scoring games, defenses like Wisconsin's and Michigan State. I would be pretty concerned if I were them.
Yeah, and I'd be concerned if I was even a Big Ten fan in general. I mean, we almost see a top 10 team like Michigan go down to Army, and we also see ranked Nebraska lose to unranked Colorado. Obviously, Nebraska isn't ranked anymore. But we see that game shouldn't have gone how it went. What do you think? What do you guys think about that one?
I thought that was the most exciting game of the weekend, for me at least. Just that late third quarter, early fourth quarter, back and forth. You had the flea flicker, 95-yard touchdown pass. Then the kick return by Nebraska. That game was thrilling.
Yeah, no, the turning point in that game had to have been the flea flicker. Back to Steven Montez, going deep. The guts, I loved the call. And without that, I don't think they win that game because not only was that a touchdown, we talked about momentum killer with Texas and that drop pass in the end zone. That was the thing that really sparked the comeback from Colorado, a home game. So Colorado did get into our rankings, they did not get into our rankings. They're one of the teams that was just left off.
Bubble, yeah.
Yeah, they were one of those bubble teams. If you were looking at the AP poll or, on ESPN, there'd be in that section of other teams receiving votes, along the likes of Iowa State and North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into the rankings a little bit later after we talk about it, but I want to go back to that Michigan game.
Yeah.
The area that really concerned me was their offense. We thought coming in, change of offensive coordinators, we thought that they were going to be much more of a spread team, and it seems like they're not doing a lot of RPO stuff. They're kind of just handing the ball off and then occasionally driving back to throw at Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson had probably his worst game as a Michigan Wolverine. He was 19 of 29 for 207 yards, no touchdowns. McCaffrey came in for a couple run plays, threw 1 pass for nothing. Also, Zach Charbonnet, on 33 rushes, he averaged only 3 yards a carry. Don't get me wrong, he had the game-winning touchdown. He had 3 of them, I believe, on the day. 100 yards, but he only averaged 3 yards a carry. That is an area of concern for me. And I had Michigan, I believe, going to the playoff in my season predictions, and their defense is good, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what their offense is right now.
You left with a lot of question marks, as you should be. And like you said, Chardonnay, he did have 100 yards to game with touchdowns, but all of his touchdowns, they weren't like long touchdowns. They were like little 2-yarders or 3-yarders or another 3-yarder, and like in the game winning in overtime. And it's just, like you said, it's concerning to see like a Power 5 team like Michigan that's usually done well in the past struggle against this Army team.
Yeah, they don't have an identity on offense. Maybe that's down to this being Josh Gaddis' first time calling plays, but Shea Patterson is such a talent. Jim Harbaugh hasn't had a quarterback like Shea Patterson, or at least a quarterback talent like Shea Patterson, and he was shackled in their pro-style offense a year ago. But this season, it hasn't clicked yet. I think it will eventually for them, but the play calling's still a question mark. And another area of concern is something they did really well when they were running the pro style was they were able to get short yardage, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 2nd and goal from the 2-yard line. They'd be able to power it in. At times against Army, they were unable to do that.
And they didn't look great against Middle Tennessee either. And they have this week off to try and fix things, but then they go to Madison, Wisconsin next Saturday. And Wisconsin, albeit against lesser competition, has not allowed a point yet this season. So that's going to be a stiff test for that Michigan offense.
Yes, that is definitely one to look forward to in the future. But we are going to get to the rankings. Or actually, here, one sec. Let me pause this. All right, so now we're going to go to our players of the week. Nick, I know you got the guy from LSU.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it could have gone either way with Ellinger or Burrow, but obviously you have to give it to the winning team. Burrow played his heart out, 31 of 39, 471, 4 TDs. Did throw one costly interception, but to go into Arlington to pull that one off, I think Burrow is without a doubt player of the week for me.
My player of the week is Evan Weaver of Cal.
Okay.
Not many people saw this game because it ended around 1 a.m. here in Arizona. But Evan Weaver on the Washington offense, who's pretty good, had 18 tackles, 2 for loss, and 1 forced fumble on Jacob Eason. And they won the game 20-19, thanks in large part to him.
Yeah, and Cal does sneak into our rankings. I know you were very high on them. Joe Burrow, the guy was inspirational. He's definitely one of the most improved players in the entire country. Last year, it seemed like he was, just a system quarterback, a game manager. Now it seems like he's the type of guy that can elevate them. And I think this is going to be – he's elevated them to a point where I think they can beat Alabama. Last year, they didn't have Devin White in that big game. Obviously, he's gone on to the NFL. Their defense is still great. They have one of the best players in the entire country with their safety, Grant Delpit. I think this might be the year that LSU can beat Alabama. I'm not saying they will, but if Joe Burrow really is the guy that went up in Austin and won the game, I think they definitely have a chance to beat Alabama if they're able to stay healthy down the year.
For sure. Who's your player of the week?
My player of the week was true freshman quarterback from USC, Keaton Slovis. First career start, and this had reminiscences of a guy named Sam Darnold.
Nice.
I believe Slovis passed for 377 and 3 touchdowns. They were down 17-3 against Stanford midway in the second quarter and they ended up blowing them out. They went on a 42-3 run. The total score ended, I believe, was 45-20. Slovis has an absolute cannon for an arm. This kid wasn't very highly recruited. He went to Desert Mountain here in the Arizona area, coached by Kurt Warner in high school. He was the one that referred him to Graham Harrell and Clay Helton at USC. And, I mean, the guy just absolutely balled out. He looked good. Some of those passes that he made, I mean, the deep ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, there was a jump ball that he threw to Michael Pittman, and he looked really, really good against a very good Stanford defense.
Yeah, we didn't talk at all about that game very much, but Stanford just looked overmatched by USC's talent all over the field for the first time in years, I'd say.
You go.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. This USC team has always been super talented. The amount of 5 stars on that team is just unreal. Like, USC, it just seemed like they weren't able to put it together. I mean, last year, T. Martin got fired as offensive coordinator. JT Daniels is a true freshman. It looked like JT Daniels was going to be able, to take that big step forward in year 2. Now in this air raid system, obviously he went down with the torn ACL, and Keaton Slovis just picked up right where he left off.
Even better.
Exactly, if even better. Maybe that's a quarterback controversy in the near future. The 5-star who started as a true freshman versus the guy that came in and won the job, or maybe win the job. But anyway, yeah, this USC team is really, really talented. If they can get the coaching around, the system to work and get them playing the way their talent is, this USC team, I don't know, I'm not going to say college football playoff, but definitely can make a run at the Pac-12 title and, push for a New Year's Six bowl. Because if you just look at the skill position players that they have, at running back, Vivek Malapai, beast. Stephen Carr had an absolutely amazing freshman year, was hurt a lot last year, and this year's come back looking like that guy we saw flashes of during his freshman year. They have 3 great wide receivers, an NFL talent, and Michael Pittman Jr., 6'4", can go up and win anything. Tyler Vaughn's a former 5-star, lightning fast, and then another former Amon-Ra St. Brown, the brother of Packers receiver Equanimous, can do absolutely everything. Speedster, slot guy. They have the talent on this roster. If the Graham Harrell can call the right plays, I think this USC team can go really, really far.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of these Pac-12 teams, this Pac-12 conference is very underrated in terms of talent. We have 5 or 6 teams in the top 25, and we have you say USC beat Stanford. Stanford was ranked before that. Cal beat Washington. Washington was ranked before that also. Oregon's ranked. I feel like if Arizona State can pull off the upset in East Lansing, they'll be ranked next week too.
And going back to USC for a second, first of all, nobody's happier about what happened this weekend than Clay Helton. They're finally off his back a little bit. There's no Urban Meyer rumors going around. He can just think about coaching football this week. But their next 4 games, they have a brutal stretch. They go at BYU, who we didn't talk about what they did in Tennessee this weekend. Tennessee is a disaster. But
that program is an absolute dumpster fire. They are garbage.
Yep.
Jeremy Pruitt isn't not the answer there. I mean, you just look at social media, and that'll tell you this whole story. There are words that we can't say on air that would describe that Tennessee football program right now.
So, yeah, USC goes at BYU this weekend. And then next Friday night, maybe the biggest game in the Pac-12 South all year, when Utah travels to the Coliseum. Then USC goes to Washington and then Notre Dame. So if they can get through this stretch, even 2-2 would be not a disaster. 3-1 would be great.
See, I think 3-1 would be, I don't know. I mean, like you said, that Notre Dame game is going to be really tough. Utah is one of the best defensive lines in the country. Keaton Slovis did have a great game, but we do need to realize he still is a true freshman, and there are going to be some bumps in the road. But like you said, if USC can get through that schedule, they're going to be pushing for a New Year's Six. All right, guys, we're going to get into the top 25 now, which is the basic premise of this show. We're going to count down 25 through number 6 right now, and then we're going to release our own rankings, and then we'll discuss the top 6 and the official rankings that are done by the point system that I created, going from 25 equaling 1 point, 1 equaling 100. As you count down the rankings, it gets bigger and bigger, the jump. So, more emphasis on a top 10 team than a top 15 team, etc. At number 25, we have Washington, who's coming off a loss to Cal. Cal at number 24, who's 2-0, obviously with that win against Washington on Saturday night. 23, we have USC. 22, Maryland. 21, Boise State. I mean, Boise State kicked the bejesus out of Florida State in the second half of that game. Another program that is just gone down the toilet.
Going to overtime against Louisiana, Lafayette or Monroe.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, sorry. Boise State beat them in week 1.
Yeah.
Bottom line, Florida State is... I don't know what to say about it. Willie Taggart seemed like he could have been the guy to do it. Jimbo Fisher jumped ship to Texas A&M. Now they're good. And Florida State is despite all the talent that they have, still just awful.
Yeah, and they're talking about off the field things like hydration issues and just all sorts of things going on in that program, similar to Tennessee, where also the fans have really turned on the program and the head coaches.
Now, I will say, despite all the hype around Boise State, they did look like they struggled a little bit against Marshall.
That's true.
Only a 14-7 game. Their quarterback play wasn't the best. Out of Boise State, we'll look to hopefully see improvements from him coming on down the stretch. But,
but we have to think about this. Hank Bachmeier had a really good second half against Florida State. He is a true freshman. Boise State is playing in the Mountain West. So, the couple games that they have coming up aren't going to be the most difficult in terms of talent because I think it's pretty clear that they are the most talented Mountain West team right now. It's probably not that close, to be fair. And he's going to improve. They have a legit defense. They have a running back. I think it's a good Boise State team. I mean, I don't think they're going to be, the group of 5 team that pushes for a New Year's Six. However, very, very deserving of that 21 ranking right now.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I just think that there's a couple question marks, but I feel like if they can fix those, then they'll probably make even the top, maybe push 16, 15 area next week.
And the Mountain West has had a pretty good non-conference showing. I mean, San Diego State went into the Rose Bowl and beat UCLA, who also another disaster.
And then I want to hear your guys' take on Maryland. Obviously, week 1, they played a nobody. They won 79-0.
Yep.
They gave up a whole 1 rushing yard in that game.
And they played nobody, but putting up 79 gave them some headlines.
Exactly. It did. And then they go and beat a Syracuse team. Dino Babers is a very good head coach. They're ranked, I believe, 21st in the AP poll going into that game. And Maryland just absolutely ran rampant over them on offense.
This offense is explosive. And that to me is an understatement. Putting up 63 against a ranked Syracuse team is no joke. And I think if you have a defense that can hold them with under 25 is insane. How many points did they combine for in the first 2 weeks? I think 120, something like that.
I think it's close to 130.
Yeah,
it's close to 130, 140.
That's insane. That's another Big Ten team that I think is underrated in terms of skill level.
And a lot of that has to be pointed to Justin Jackson, the transfer from Virginia Tech. Who was, to be fair to him, very, very good. His first year and a half at Virginia Tech, did he break his leg last year before transferring?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, he broke his leg.
Yep.
Transferred to Maryland, and he's looked great. I mean, like we said, he's put up 8 touchdown passes. A lot of them were against Howard in the first game, but still, the guy is very, very talented. Dual threat guy. He's got an absolute cannon. He can throw the ball down the field, and he's 6'3", powerful runner, very hard to bring down. It's going to be interesting to see this Maryland team, going forward, being that they're in the easier division in the Big Ten.
Yep.
They have Temple next week, and then they got the big one against Penn State. That's where we're going to see if this team is legit or if the teams they were just playing were just straight boof.
Well, Syracuse isn't boof. Well, at least that's what we thought until last week. But
exactly.
We'll see that. Like you said, the Penn State game, that'll be the big test for that Maryland team.
Yeah, early season rankings are so fluid. I mean, Syracuse was ranked, but I don't know if they're a top 25 team in the country.
Well, here's the thing.
Last week.
Syracuse, they play Clemson this week. They play them hard. It'd be foolish to think that that's not, what's going to happen again. They have a talented quarterback in Tommy DeVito. They have a very good head coach that I really like in Dino Babers. But defensively, they are just in shambles right now. So we'll have to see whether or not Maryland's really good on offense or Syracuse is just awful on defense. I think it's a mixture of both. I don't think they're the best offense in the country. I don't think they're the worst defense in the country. I think it's a good offense with a lot of talented players, a good young quarterback, versus the weakness of a Syracuse team whose, strengths most likely lie on offense.
Yeah.
And then we already talked about Cal a bit. I want to go back to Washington. Your player of the week was the Cal defense. How do you guys think Jacob Eason looked? Because that kid is one of the most talented players, or quarterbacks for that matter, that I've ever seen in the last few years. Because that kid can make every single throw, everything you could ask of a quarterback. He has it in his locker, but Eason just can't seem to find that consistency.
Yeah, he didn't look great on Saturday night. Now, the Cal secondary is one of the best in the country. They call themselves the Takers, and Eason was picked off on a slant that wasn't a terrible throw, but it wasn't a smart throw, and the Cal defender cut in front. But only putting up 19 points on Cal, even if they're one of the best defenses in the country, you're at home. It was a weird game because it was so late, the lightning delay, and the stadium was about a third full. But if Jacob Eason wants to be one of the best players in the country, he's got to win that game.
Yeah, for me, it's just consistency. You see him go week 1, he threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, had a completion percentage of 75%, and then go up against a ranked team who he's supposed to like perform better in prime time. Obviously, he goes 18 for 30 and throws an interception. Gets sacked 3 times also. I mean, that Cal defense is no joke. I just feel like I just wanted to see more out of Eason coming in the next couple of weeks.
I will say he had one throw to the corner of the end zone that I think was the receiver's fault not getting his feet in bounds. He kind of jumped for the ball when he didn't have to and landed out of bounds. So he could have had a touchdown, but all in all, not a great performance.
Yeah. The one thing that I think captures Jacob Eason's talent is if we go back to his time at Georgia, remember he was a 5-star recruit, the number 1 quarterback in the country in his class. Do you guys remember that Tennessee game with the 2 Hail Marys? The one where he put Georgia ahead to wide receiver Riley Ridley. He rolled to his left, stopped, and threw an absolute missile about 55 yards in the air to Riley Ridley for the go-ahead touchdown. That's the type of arm strength that this kid has. He has Trevor Lawrence's arm strength. I just don't think he has the same poise and the same calmness under pressure because, we saw what Trevor Lawrence did in the college football playoff. That guy is, he would have been the number 1 pick at the age of 19. So it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch to see whether or not Jacob Eason really can develop into the player he's so talented, how would I explain this? The player that we all know he can be.
Yeah, he has so much potential.
He does. He still does. He still might be a top 2-3 round pick purely based off his arm talent. But, at the end of the day, he's got to start producing. Chris Peterson's a good coach. This is a good Washington team. I think they just had an off day. I still think they're a better football team than Cal. And I think watching the game, I'd still put Washington above Cal, and I did. However, win or lose, head-to-head has to mean something. And for that matter, obviously, in our ranking system, Cal is ranked 1 ahead of Washington. So as we move on to the 20 through 15, we'll recap 25 through 20. 25 was Washington, 24 Cal, 23 USC, 22 Maryland, 21 Boise State. Now moving on to number 20, we have Mike Leach's Washington State, Brandon Wimbush quarterbacked UCF. At number 18 is Iowa, 17 Michigan State, 16 Texas A&M.
Well, Washington State has played New Mexico State and Northern Colorado. So
exactly.
Kind of like ASU, they haven't really met some stiff competition yet. They have a neutral site game versus Houston on Friday night. I believe it's in Texas, but at the Houston Texans Stadium. So pretty much a road game. But yeah, that'll be a test for Mike Leach. But they've looked impressive against lesser competition so far.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Gordon's put up some good numbers, but that's what's going to happen when you're in a Mike Leach offense. I don't think I'm sold on Washington State yet. Like you said, the 2 teams that they've played are just, the competition's not that stiff. We're going to get to see whether or not Washington State's defense is legit. De'Aaron King is no joke at quarterback. Obviously, he didn't play great against Oklahoma in week 1. However, what we saw to that guy last year, I believe he personally accounted for more points per game than anyone in the country, and that included Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, all of the best players in the country. He would outscore. So we'll really get to see how good of a defense Washington State does have.
Yeah, going up the rankings here to Michigan State, just like any other team like we've talked about, they haven't played any competition yet. They played Tulsa week 1. Handled them pretty easily, 28-7. Then they played Western Michigan, putting up 51, allowing 17. I haven't been sold on a Michigan State team ever since the Kirk Cousins, Le'Veon Bell days. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do against our Arizona State team, and see if they can take that next step and hopefully make a New Year's Six bowl.
Yeah, that will definitely be one of the games that we do discuss, following the release of all these rankings in our preview for the upcoming weekend. And one thing we have to consider in that is Michigan State probably has the best run defense in the entire country. In their first game against Tulsa, how many rush yards do you think they gave up? This is just a little question. Don't look it up. Don't cheat. Don't cheat. How much would you guess that they would give it up?
Like 15.
15?
I'll go like 20.
I believe it was negative 76.
Wow.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're legit. Obviously, it was against a very poor Tulsa team. And we're stat checking that right now. I do believe it was negative 76. If you look at the team stats. Real quick, we can pause it.
And they're going to face...
Negative 73.
Oh, sorry. It was negative 73 rushing yards. Bottom line, they're legit. Brian Lewerke, disappointing season last year. He's been a lot better so far this year. They blew the door off of Western Michigan. I think this Michigan State team is really, really good. And it's going to be interesting to see whether Arizona State, coming off of a very poor performance, will be able to match up with Michigan State's talent and ability-wise, especially on defense, and pull off back-to-back wins against the Spartans.
I mean, if we can't rush well against Sacramento State, there's no reason to believe we can do it against the best run defense in the country. Benjamin practically loved him to death. Our offensive line just can't hold him to save his life. It was nice to see, break out his 35-yarder, but that was off a pass. So our run offense is going to have to come together against Michigan
the
State.
Offensive line for Arizona State is definitely one of the questions.
By far the biggest for me.
We'll take one little step back. We'll try and get it more organized over the next week, maybe, count down with the teams. But for now, we're kind of jumping around. It is what it is. It's a Wednesday night. We're all tired. We're just going to power through this now. We're going to talk about Iowa. Iowa State coming up. How do you guys feel about this team? This is another one of those teams that, in the weaker division in the Big Ten, they've looked okay so far. They beat Rutgers in Miami, Ohio. They got a senior quarterback in Nate Stanley, very talented. They can run the ball. They play defense. It's just, I think they're good. Another one of these teams that I'm just not sold on.
Yeah, I feel like Iowa has the same team every year. I mean, it seems like they're always ranked in the 15 to 25 range. They always go like 9-3. They're just a consistently good program. And the Iowa State game in Ames at Iowa State is going to be a tough one for them.
Yeah, for sure. It's a rivalry game. Obviously, the in-state rivalry there. Like you said, I haven't been sold on the Iowa team in I don't know how long. They're always just consistent. They're always ranked.
They're good. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to run the football. They got it. But this year, I think maybe the difference is Nate Stanley, I think, is a little bit better than some of their quarterbacks of the past.
For sure.
However, in crucial moments, in previous years, thinking back to those Penn State games and actually back-to-back years, he threw made crucial mistakes and turned the ball over at the wrong points during games. So, like I said, they're another team that I'm not quite sold on. I think Iowa State's a very well-coached team. Matt Campbell's one of the most underrated coaches in the country. They obviously didn't play well against Northern Iowa. However, I think they're going to bounce back, and that'll be a very, very good game to watch. All right, back to number 16 now. Texas A&M did not look great against Clemson. I thought they were one of those teams that might have been able to sneak into the playoffs, that they were able to get out of that extremely, extremely tough schedule, which, to be fair, no one really thought they would, because they probably play the hardest schedule in the entire country. Being in the SEC West, having to go on the road to Clemson, it's just, it's too much. But the concerning part about it was Kellen Mond's accuracy. We saw how good Kellen Mond was at the beginning of this season and at the end of last season.
And
Jimbo.
last year versus Clemson, too.
Exactly.
He had
Yeah.
a great performance in that game.
Exactly. Kellen Mond is a good quarterback, but this game, he was just so wildly inaccurate. It basically did not allow Texas A&M to really have a go and a realistic chance at beating the number one team in the country.
Yeah, I thought A&M for the first quarter, first half, I thought they matched up pretty well with Clemson at the line of scrimmage. But yeah, Mon just didn't make the throws. Trevor Lawrence, we know how good he is. And overtime, I don't think anybody was surprised with the result.
Yeah, for sure. I was obviously surprised that, I mean, it is Clemson, so it's not surprising that A&M did have its struggles and that their quarterback play wasn't the best. But especially with Trevor Lawrence, we've seen him struggle a little bit this year, and I'm not.
I picked him to be my Heisman, and I'm not so confident on that. I still think he's probably the best quarterback. Prospect at the moment. I don't even think it's close. We'll get more into that later when we talk about Clemson. But now we're going to move on to 15 through 11. At 15, we have the Oregon Ducks, who are now 1-1. They lost, obviously, week 1, but rebounded last week. Number 14, Penn State. 13, Texas, coming off that nail-biter in Austin, which they fell to the LSU Tigers. Number 12, Wisconsin. And number 11, the highest-ranked Pac-12 team in our rankings, Utah.
I'll start by talking about Oregon. We all know, tough loss to Auburn week 1. But last week they played Nevada, who beat Purdue the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And they
steamrolled
Nevada.
Obviously, Malik
77-6.
Henry, Last Chance U. Little.
Oh,
I don't know how you guys are fans of that show, but you know.
Good show.
Yeah. Oregon looked good against Nevada. I mean, but
Yeah.
here's the thing. Like, we're talking about some of these teams, and, you should beat out Nevada. You should blow them out. You shouldn't, I don't know about score 70, but you should definitely put up some big-time numbers against them. And I know they lost to Auburn. However, I did see an Oregon team that is a good team. Their offensive line is very good. They can run the football. Justin Herbert is a future NFL starting quarterback. I think Mario Cristobal is a good coach. I'm not completely sure on that yet. However, I do think this is a very good Oregon team. I don't think that they can make a run at the college football playoff anymore, just given that they lost that Auburn game. But there's no reason to think that this Oregon team can't win out and be playing in the Rose Bowl.
For sure. I mean, this is one of the toughest Pac-12 teams like any team will ever face.
Mm-hmm.
Herbert, obviously, like you said, future NFL quarterback, probably like leading the Heisman candidacy as of now after throwing 5 touchdowns against Nevada.
See, I disagree with you on that one. I think the Heisman leader, I'll get to that later, but I don't think that losing a game, being 1-1 and losing a close game like that, throwing, over your receiver's target or way over the end zone on the Hail Mary helps his Heisman cause. But for sure, you could say he's looked the best as the quarterback, or the best looking quarterback in the country so far. But
he's definitely up there in the Heisman race. You could argue that.
Oh, yeah, no, he could definitely make a run at it, especially if Oregon does run the table in the Pac-12. Moving on to Penn State, look, I think they're a good team. James Franklin is a hell of a coach. They play defense. Young quarterbacks look pretty decent.
They're another team that hasn't played anybody.
Exactly.
It's
Some of these
tough
teams,
to talk about.
we see that a lot of it, what we've seen is them blowing out a team. They look good on paper. We've seen what their players who are returning are from. They have a highly recruited class. Sick. Texas, played that real close game. I thought this might have been the year for Texas. It still might be. At the end of the day, I think they just lost to a better LSU team. Yeah. I think Coach O is probably a better coach. Or, no, excuse me. He got out-coached by Coach Herman got out-coached by Coach O. Whew. Too many O's. Oregon, Ogeron. I mean, geez. Maybe Ogeron should coach Oregon. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't come away from this weekend feeling any different about Texas. I mean, there's a reason LSU was favored by 6. Texas's fans could dream about Texas being back, but in reality, they've still got a ways to go, and they played pretty well. So.
Exactly, and we did see what the Georgia game of last year confirmed. Texas, in the trenches, can match up against the SEC. Defensively, I don't think they're there yet, especially in their secondary. We saw what Joe Burrow did to them. Yes, he's one of the most improved players in the country, but as a defensive coordinator, you don't want to be giving up 400-plus passing yards and 4 touchdowns every week. They play in the Big 12, the most pass-happy conference in the entire country, so that's something they definitely need to work on. But this is a very good Texas team. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to be all right. I think they're going to be fine. They're still going to be, in the talks around the playoff. Maybe if they end the season, they run the table, including a win against Oklahoma coming up in a couple weeks. So Texas's season is not over. Moving on to Wisconsin. They haven't given up a point yet this year.
Well, they've also played subpar teams.
I mean, USF is no slouch.
That's true.
Blake Barnett is Charlie Strong's a good head coach. Blake Barnett is a talented quarterback. They got some players at USF, but Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor is an absolute stud.
Monster. For sure.
He's one of the two best running backs in the country without a doubt. I think it's him and Travis Etienne, and I think it's everybody. Him, Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift from Georgia.
I would put Taylor in a class by himself.
See, I do see where you're saying there. Jonathan Taylor had more rushing yards than anyone in the history of college football his freshman year. His sophomore year, more rushing yards than anyone in the history of college football in their sophomore year. He is one of the most underappreciated great running backs that we've seen in a long time. And I think it's because he plays at Wisconsin. And the fact is they can't win that big game. They can't win that Big 12. They always get to the Big 10 championship. They just can't finish it out. And is this the year? I don't think so.
No.
I'm not sold on their quarterback, Cone. I think in that Michigan game, I think their pass offense is going to get exposed because I think they're going to need to throw the ball to win that game, and it's really going to hurt them.
I think this will define Jonathan Taylor's excellence because we saw how Army was able to run the ball against Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see Taylor run against that Michigan defense, who did look sloppy against Army. We can argue that Army has a better run offense in terms of the offensive line, but this offensive line of Wisconsin is protecting Jonathan Taylor. I just feel like he might run happy against that Michigan defense.
Yeah, and the thing for Wisconsin, they're going to be a team to reckon with for the New Year's Six. If they can make passes and complete third downs, those 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7s that they have struggled with for years and years with the likes of Alex Hornibrook. I mean, even going back years and years, since Russell Wilson, they haven't really had a quarterback that can, when you're down a touchdown, 2-minute drill, drive you down the field, make that pass on the sidelines, throw the ball up the seams on 4th down or 3rd down, and complete plays down the field. If Alex Cone can do that, they're going to be Jack Cone. I don't know why I was saying Alex, but yeah, Jack Cone. If he can do that, this Wisconsin team just takes a huge leap forward.
Yeah.
In what they can do this season.
I know the game isn't this weekend, it's next weekend, but since both teams have byes, not much will change until then. But Michigan at Wisconsin, who would you guys have favored in this game? Because right now I think I'd have Wisconsin.
I have Wisconsin. After what I saw against the Army
Mm-hmm.
team, and what I've been seeing from Jonathan Taylor and Jack Cohen, their quarterback play, I'd have to take Wisconsin.
Okay, guys. So Michigan was our 10th ranked team in the country. It's fitting that we might as well just talk about them right now because we're talking about Wisconsin.
Sure.
So Michigan, we talked about that game against Army. It's so frustrating to watch Michigan. Like, they're so talented. Tariq Black, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Zach Charbonnet, Shea Patterson. Oh my gosh. We saw what he could do while he was at Ole Miss. We saw how talented of a player he was in high school at IMG. He's the type of guy that you should be running RPOs with. Get him outside the pocket, get him running. He can throw the ball downfield with accuracy. He's one of the more accurate passers in the entire country. I think the oblique injury was really hurting him against Army, his accuracy especially. I believe he missed, four passes in a row going into overtime. But it's just this Michigan team, I had them going to the playoff. They obviously still can get there given just how tough of a schedule they still have remaining. But right now, I don't think I can have them any higher than 10.
I couldn't agree with you more. I just feel like for them, it's just a question of Shea Patterson's quarterback play and the running game. You can argue, okay, it looks good on paper, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns, sure. If you look at those carries, like we said earlier, 3 yards a carry. Are you kidding me? Against an Army? I mean, I'm not to disrespect Army by any means. I'm just saying they should be they shouldn't be going to overtime against these teams like that, and it'll hurt them when they play Ohio State, when they play Wisconsin, especially. I'm not a believer in Michigan this year.
Yeah, no, I don't see. I mean, yeah, you said no disrespect to Army, but I think that's an incredibly valid point. Michigan's offensive line is so much bigger than Army's defense, just because the nature of what Army is.
We do need to consider is that Army is a very good football team.
Yeah, no
they're a
disrespect.
very good football team.
I'm not.
But if you're Michigan, you have
exactly,
to beat that team
yeah.
by several touchdowns.
We know Don Brown's going to have his defense. They're going to be one of the best defenses in the country, especially in the pass game. They're going to play man-to-man coverage, and they're going to make you beat them. But it's still that offense thing. I don't know if Josh Gaddis is the guy. And Jim Harbaugh, everyone credits him as this great quarterback guru, former NFL quarterback. It's just, in his time at Michigan, he hasn't been able to develop that guy. We all thought it was going to be Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson does have the talent. I think Shea Patterson can be that guy. I just think they need to build the offense and play call the offense around his skill set. RPOs, underneath passing routes. Get him mobile. Let him throw the ball down the field. It's just, I don't know. I think Michigan's going to be fine. I just think that Army played them really well. They're playing a tough team. I think they're going to go on the road and beat Wisconsin if I'm not. It's on the road, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Madison.
I think they're going to go to Madison. I think they're going to get the win. I think Shea Patterson's going to have a very good game, maybe even a breakout game. But I can't have them any more than 10 because I haven't been convinced. They have not been convincing so far this year.
And it's time for Jim Harbaugh to start winning some big games.
And then,
What
yeah,
is it,
exactly.
Year 5?
This is year 5. And here's the thing with Jim Harbaugh. The pressure needs to be on him because at the end of the day, Urban Meyer's gone.
Yeah.
He didn't beat Ohio State yet. He's going to have to beat Ohio State this year. If he doesn't beat Ohio State this year, Ryan Day's first year, it might not ever happen.
In Ann Arbor this year?
I think so, because last year I think he was in the horseshoe last year.
Exactly, because the fourth down play 2 years ago was at Ohio State.
Oh, wait, so...
So it's back at Ohio State.
It's in Ann Arbor.
Oh, it's in Ann Arbor?
Sure?
Yes.
Okay.
We can check. It's in Ann Arbor. So, exactly. They're at home.
Pressure's on.
The pressure's on this year for Jim Harbaugh, and I think if he doesn't win that game, if they don't win 10 games this year, he's going to be one of those coaches that's going to be
on the hot seat
going into next year. And it's just going to be interesting to watch. But I do truly believe Michigan's going to be fine. I still think that they can make a run at the college ball playoff. They're still my prediction to go to the college ball playoff. Michigan, unleash Shea. Jim, if you're listening to this, which you're probably not, break the shackles. Let him go.
I mean, it's easy for me to root against Michigan, growing up in Ohio, but it's just easy for me just to tear this team apart each and every year. They're not gonna beat Ohio State, and I have them losing against Madison. And I think Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's gonna ruin their college football playoffs. And it'll just make Wisconsin that much more of a favorite to jump into that Big Ten slot.
And then backtracking one, I promise next week and for the rest of the show, we'll go one by one. But we're kind of, jumbling in the 10 through 15 type of range. But yeah, Utah. I think Utah is a very similar team to Wisconsin. I think Utah's a better team than Wisconsin based on their defense. I think Utah has one of, if not, probably the top 5 defensive line in the entire country. Coach Whittingham said this is the best defensive line he's ever had. And they've had some ballers on that defensive line. You think of the likes of Star Lotulelei and all those guys. This is a good Utah team. They can run the football. If Tyler Huntley is on it in the passing game, this Utah team is a dark horse college football playoff contender.
Wow.
I'm not saying they're going to do it,
Yeah.
but they can.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Moss is no joke. He's not Jonathan Taylor. No, he's not Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift. But he's in that group of guys right underneath that level because that dude can just absolutely eat with the ball. He gets upfield. He's so powerful. He's quick. He's decisive. He hits the holes. He is a fantastic player, and I think this is a really good Utah team. And, they got that USC game coming up, and that's going to be one of the biggest games in the Pac-12 because USC was off our radar, at the beginning of the season. But with Keaton Slovis, Graham Harrell calling plays now, USC might be back.
It's true. I thought after the JT Daniels injury, it would be over for them.
Exactly. Same here. But that game is definitely one to watch for in 2 weeks. That might be the game, in the Pac-12 that decides the Pac-12 South. However, it still is early in the season. We need to pump the brakes. But we're going to accelerate in the show.
I would say the winner of that game is a big favorite to win the Pac-12.
Exactly. We are going to accelerate now in the show. At number 10, like we said, we have Michigan. Number 9, Florida. Number 8, Notre Dame. And number 7, Auburn. Number 9, Florida. They can rush the passer. They're going to get to the quarterback. But Felipe Franks, damn it, that guy is... Damn it, he's inconsistent.
What a name, though, Felipe Franks.
Felipe
Yeah,
Franks.
You see, what we saw against Michigan in the bowl game last year, we saw the good Felipe.
Yeah.
The guy that can pick up yards, pick up third downs with his legs, the guy that can throw the ball down the field with that cannon of an arm. And then you think about the Miami game earlier this season,
Terrible.
and he's throwing dumb picks and making really bad decisions that you would have expected him to have grown out of by now.
And doesn't it seem like that game was 2 months ago? I mean, it was week 0, but Miami was ranked. Now they're 0-2. They lost at Mac Brown's North Carolina. And so that win doesn't look as impressive. I mean, it was an ugly game, so it never looked that impressive. But in terms of their resume at the end of the season, I don't know if it will look as good as they thought at the time.
I mean, it goes back to Felipe, obviously. You have a game where he goes 17 of 27 for 254, which isn't terrible, but then he throws those 2 picks and those 2 interceptions, which brings out the turnover chain, which makes Miami look like a top 5 defense when they're really not.
Manny Diaz is a good defensive coach.
I mean,
He was one of the best defensive coordinators. I think he's going to be a good head coach. But I do get what you're saying. Miami is not a great football team. And Florida let them in it. Miami was driving in the fourth quarter. They had a chance to win that football game. It was just Florida made the plays when they needed to. And, their defensive line is what won them that game. I believe they had 6 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. The defense is no joke, but Felipe Franks is just so darn inconsistent. You just don't know what you're getting out of him week to week. You could get the guy that went on the road and beat LSU, or you could get the guy that's going to throw 3 interceptions in a game and lose it for you.
Against UT Martin, my man, look, probably a perfect passing rating. He had 2 incompletions, and he threw for 2 touchdowns. Like, to me, that's almost like a perfect game from Felipe. Again, it was against UT Martin, not like a huge sample size to go off of. But so if we can get close or near to this Felipe, come against that SEC teams, we could see Florida sneak into some SEC play.
And this weekend they go at Kentucky, which I think is one of the more underrated games of the weekend.
They lost to Kentucky last year for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
And that Kentucky, Mark Stoops is the head coach there. They're a good football team. They were a ranked football team for a lot of times last year. They were really good last year. It's probably the best Kentucky team they've had, at least during our lifetimes.
Yeah, sure.
So that will be a tough game. We're going to really see whether or not Florida is actually the team that we've seen. I don't even know how to explain it. Florida's another one of those teams. I don't know what to get out of them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to describe the way.
They're like Michigan.
I disagree with you on that. I think they're much more on the lines of a Penn State.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I think they're better than Penn State. I think right now they have to be ranked ahead of Michigan because, I mean, what have we seen out of Michigan? We saw them almost lose.
To Army.
Exactly.
Not to discredit Army.
They should have lost Army. They should have lost Army.
If there was no preseason poll and no preseason rankings at all, and everybody just started on the same level, Michigan would not be in the top like 60 right now, just based on.
See, I disagree with you very heavily on that
I'm just
because
talking about
I think
results
Army.
of the first 2 weeks. I'm not talking about imagine you just like woke up week 1, you didn't know anything about anybody, you just watched the first 2 weeks of games. They would not.
See, I would disagree with you there. I think their defense. I think Don Brown, Jim Harbaugh, put them in there. I think they're definitely a top 15 team in the country. I think they're a top 10 team in the country if they can get that offense working. I think they're a team that can make it into the college ball playoff. But no, they have not been convincing so far this season.
Yeah.
Florida has been somewhat more convincing, a little bit.
A little bit.
A little
I
bit.
mean, what have we seen them? We've seen them beat a Miami team that's 0-2 now by 4, and we saw them. Okay, they blew out UT Martin, sure, but it's UT Martin.
Yeah, but if we're comparing to Michigan gave up like 21 points to Middle Tennessee.
See, it's a double-edged sword. It's just, I think Florida's defensive line and the way that they get after the quarterback at the moment, and Michigan's lack of offensive identity is why I think Florida slightly edges them. However, I don't think it's that far. Another team that didn't look overly convincing in the first half in their first game against Louisville was Notre Dame. They didn't look good in the first half. They were extremely sloppy. Second half, Ian Book and Brian Kelly's boys, they got it together a bit. I think the second half team that we saw is actually what Notre Dame is. The first half was just, a little bit of jitters, some off-season rust, just trying to get going. It was the beginning of the season. Mistakes are going to happen. They obviously have this New Mexico game coming up before the biggest game maybe of the season so far. Possibly even bigger than the game we had in Austin last week where they go and play at Georgia in Athens. But I think this Notre Dame team is still really, really good. I don't know if they're top 6. However, they're no joke. They're a good football team.
Yeah, they took control in the second half against Louisville. This week's a tune-up, and then that Georgia game will be a real test in a hostile environment.
People can argue that Notre Dame has an advantage because they're not in a conference. They don't have to play in a conference championship, this and that. But looking at this year's schedule, it looks like they'll probably put those critics to rest. They play Louisville. Obviously, they weren't ranked. But that's a decent, good opponent. New Mexico is not the best, but it's still sizable. But then they go on the road against Athens, play Georgia. Then after that, they play Virginia. And a couple weeks after that, they play USC. Then Michigan. All these teams, I think.
Yeah, Notre Dame has always played a good schedule. They're never one of those teams that anyone criticizes for cupcaking games. Yes, it hurts them not being in a conference at times for the playoff because of the strength and the power of the conferences within the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. However, if Notre Dame is undefeated, given that the schedule that they play, I think that they need to be in the college football playoff. Unless, there's more undefeated teams that are more deserving. But like I said, they play a tough enough schedule that if they go run the table and go undefeated, they should be in the college football playoff. That's just how it is.
That's facts.
It's almost the same thing as being in a conference and being like, if you win the Pac-12 or you win the SEC and go undefeated, you should be in the playoff most likely.
Even if they lose at Georgia and then Georgia goes on to win the SEC, which I think is very possible this year.
They still have they still have an argument.
Especially if they can beat like USC and
that's
Michigan.
Assuming they'd be 11-1.
That's assuming they beat Michigan too.
Moving on to Auburn and Bo Nix, baby. Whoo-wee. That first game was down to the wire. Guts. Gus Malzahn back on play calling duties. This is a good Auburn team. They play defense. They got a good run game. And Bo Nix, yes, he had a bit of hiccups, but the guy is talented. That guy is good when the matters, when the game is on the line, he's at his best. I think this is a really good Auburn team. And well-deserving this number 7 ranking.
Yeah, I think their defense is one of the best in the country. I am not as sold as you are on Bo Nix. Yeah. Other than that final drive, he did not play very well.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. He's a true freshman.
Yeah.
And in the clutch moments, I mean, come on. down what? They were down what? 2 points or 1 point? I don't know. Whatever it was, he drops back, third down and long, finds the man. Second and 12, finds the man. I believe second and 12. Or bottom line, he converted multiple third downs in that drive, and including a touchdown, which the Ducks brought pressure in. He had to step up in the pocket, throw the ball up for grabs, having trust in the receiver to go up and make the grab. He's a very good young quarterback. Obviously, he did complete less than 50% of his passes in that game. There is no denying that. He's a freshman. They're going to have ups and downs. And that's why I don't think Auburn is going to make a run at the playoff. I think their schedule is too tough, and I think Bo Nix's, turnovers will eventually hurt them at some points this season. But like you said, the defense is really, really good. They can get to the quarterback. They play decent pass coverage. I think they have 2 solid safeties. And I think they're obviously a top 10 team for me so far this season.
I think if they go 9-3, I mean their schedule is brutal. If they go 9-3,
yeah, they're in the SEC West.
Yeah, if they go 9-3, they're still one of the 10 or 15 best teams in the country because they play number 2 Alabama, number 3 Georgia, number 4 LSU, number 9 Florida, number 16 A&M. I mean, if they were to go 2-3 in those games, it'd be pretty impressive.
This team is good. This team is in the SEC. Obviously, it's one of the powerhouses for like over the past decade or so. But their offense, it's giving me question marks. They put up what, 24 against a Tulane team that they have no business even being in the game. I mean, obviously there was no game from start to finish, but I just need to see more about Bo Nix. I mean, okay, I get he's a freshman. I get he's going through growing pains, this and that. But for him to put up these type of numbers, 19-37 for 207 and only 1 touchdown, it's just concerning to me that Tulane was even like within striking distance.
Exactly. I think it's going to be a very up and down year for Auburn. And I think having Gus Malzahn back on play calls really, really helps Bo Nix because Gus Malzahn is one of the best offensive minds in all of football. Whether you want to talk about NFL, college football, whatever, the guy's a wizard with the spread offense. I think, he's going to make some mistakes. It's going to cost him a game or 2 down the road this season. It may cost them a game, in a couple weeks against Texas A&M or against a Mississippi State. It's probably going to cost him against Georgia or Alabama. But those are down the road. I think if he learns, improves, I think next year is really the year we'll be able to see Bo Nix, maybe even his junior year. But when the game is on the line, he's got that clutch gene. He wasn't rattled. He's not rattled. The guy just keeps going. And that is the most impressive thing that I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, for sure. His clutch factor is without a doubt like up there for even a freshman. But we'll just have to see how he plays against these SEC teams. I don't see him getting past some of these SEC teams, obviously, but it's interesting to me to see how he handles it.
Yeah, he's 2 games into his career.
Okay, and then moving so now guys, we're going to go into our own rankings. Then we're going to give the top 6. So why don't we start out with you, Nick? What'd you have different compared to the rankings that our point system combined rankings gave us? So Ray, why don't you tell us what you had differently in your rankings?
All right, so I had North Carolina in the rankings at 25, just based on they have 2 pretty solid wins so far.
Sam Howell, the true freshman quarterback, looked really good. This is the year that true freshman quarterback, and obviously the wide receiver, because, I mean, oh my God, there's so many good ones out there. Look at the likes of Jerry Jeudy and the boys at Alabama, Justin Ross, T. Higgins at Clemson, the boys at SC, the Michigan guys. Okay, yeah, back to you, sorry.
So North Carolina has beaten South Carolina and Miami, 2 solid wins for Mac Brown there. I had USC at 24, Boise State 23, Maryland 22, Washington State 21, Cal 20, because I just feel that road win at Washington was pretty impressive. UCF 19, same as our official rankings. Iowa 18, Michigan State 17, A&M 16, Oregon 15, Texas 14, Utah 13. I had Michigan down at 12 just because I feel they really haven't been that impressive so far. Penn State at 11, Florida 10. I had Wisconsin all the way up at 9 because I've been really impressed by just their defense and Jonathan Taylor. Auburn at 8, Notre Dame 7, Oklahoma 6, Ohio State 5, LSU up at 4, based on their great win at Texas. And I mean, they look like for the first time in years they have a good offense. They usually rely on their defense, maybe some skill position players. This year they have a good quarterback who can lead them. Georgia 3, Alabama 2, and Clemson 1. Pretty standard top 3.
So as far as my ranking goes, I had the same teams in the 25. I just had them like ranked a little differently. So starting at 25, I have USC, which I've been impressed with them all year. I just haven't like ranked like at 25 just to see how they react after the JT Daniels injury and how they can withstand that. After that, 24, I have Virginia, 23, Washington, 22, Maryland, one of the more underrated teams in the Big Ten, 21, Boise State, 20, Iowa, another underrated Big Ten team, 19, Washington State, 18, Michigan State, 17, UCF, who's very underrated in my eyes, 16, Oregon, 15, A&M, 14, Wisconsin. I just need to see a little bit more out of not Jonathan Taylor, but just that offense and that defense in my eyes. 13, Penn State. 12, Texas. That loss against LSU did hurt them a little bit, but they're not going to slip out of my top 15 for sure. 11, Michigan. They're out of my top 10 just because of the Army game. For me, wasn't very impressed. 10, Utah. 9, Notre Dame. 8, Florida. 7, Auburn. 6, Oklahoma. 5, Ohio State. 4, Georgia. 3, LSU, who I just think is a top 3 team after that Texas game. Joe Burrow showed us why he is the man in LSU. 2, Bama, and 1, Clemson.
All right, yeah. Really interesting. I had a little disagreements. At 25, I still had Iowa State. Obviously, a very poor game against Northern Iowa, a team that they should have won handily against. However, I think Matt Campbell's a really good coach. Brock Purdy is a baller. I think their defense, is solid. I think they're one of the better defenses in the entire Big 12. 24, Maryland. 23, Washington. 22, UCF. 21, Washington State. 20, USC. They had one of the most impressive wins of the season so far against Stanford last week. I understand Keaton Slovis has only started one game. However, there's no denying his arm strength, the talent around him, and how big of a win that was against Stanford. 19, Boise State. 18, Iowa. 17, Texas A&M. 16, Penn State. 15, Wisconsin. 14, Oregon. 13, Michigan State, so I was a little bit higher on them than the rest of you guys were. I really think Brian Lewerke, is going to really have a bounce-back year at quarterback. That run defense, as we talked about, so deep. I think they're definitely a team to watch out for in the Big Ten. Number 12, Texas. I think they're going to be just fine, even though they lost that game against LSU. Number 11, Utah. Number 10, Michigan. Number 9, Florida. Number 8, Notre Dame. Number 7, Auburn. Number 6, Ohio State, which last week really settled my nerves about their offense. Or, no, not their offense. Their defense. They gave up 21 to FAU. I believe, was it 21? Yeah, I believe 21 points up to FAU in the second half. A little bit concerning, but last week they shut him out. Justin Fields looked like, he looked like a good player so far. Number 5, Oklahoma. Love Jalen Hurts. Love his mentality. Guy's a beast. Number 4, Georgia. Number 3, LSU. Number 2, Alabama. And number 1, Clemson. So, we talked about our rankings. We gave our top 6. We all have the same top 6. Just the order's a bit changed.
Yeah.
Number 6 in the official TPC rankings is Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Number 5 is Ohio State. Number 4 is the University of Georgia. Number 3, LSU. Number 2, Alabama. And number 1, Clemson. All right, so guys, we're going to talk a little bit of playoff right now. Alabama and Clemson, I believe, have separated themselves as the 2 best programs currently right now in the entire country. They've played 4 years in a row now. Those national championships dating back to Deshaun Watson, freshman Jalen Hurts. So the two of them we all know right now are the top two teams in the country. After that, it gets a little tricky. I put LSU above Georgia. We had them over them in our official rankings. And that came down to me is from what I saw on the field. On the field, so far this season, LSU has been a better team than Georgia.
I agree.
They went on the road and beat a very good Texas team in Austin in prime time. Joe Burrow has surprised me a lot of how much he's improved. In my opinion, he's the most improved player in the entire country this year. So that's what separates it from me. Yes, Georgia, in the past, we've seen them be able to go toe-to-toe with Alabama. Yes, they have DeAndre Swift, Zaire Smith, and all those great running backs. Yes, Jake Fromm is a very good quarterback. I just think from what I've seen from LSU so far, they just get it for me.
Yeah, I can see that. I had Georgia 3, LSU 4, just based on the talent, and I think Georgia has more actual talent. Yes, LSU's looked more impressive so far during this season. But going back to Clemson for a second, they have no ranked teams left on their schedule. And at least
they're going to run the table.
Yeah,
they're going to win out. They're going to go to the playoff, basically.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they didn't go to the playoffs. They could see a ranked team in the ACC championship, or if something drastically changes. But this game versus Syracuse, which I'd say they'd be heavily favored, might actually be in their top half of most challenging games left.
Absolutely. Syracuse is their bogey team. They do not play the orange well. They lost a couple years ago, back when Kelly Bryant went down with an injury. Last year, Trevor Lawrence went down and they needed Chase. What's his last name? Chase something. Chase Bryce. They needed Chase Bryce to come and rescue them. It's going to be a tough game for them, but I think they're going to win out. And like he said, I'd be completely shocked if Clemson doesn't end up in the college football playoff this year.
Exactly. Like you said, top two is pretty much locked. You have Clemson, Bama. You could go either way with either two of them. But then after that, I have LSU over Georgia just solely based off that Texas game. I think that LSU sold me on that game. It was either LSU would be my top 5 or Texas would be my top 5. Texas unfortunately slipped a little bit for me. But LSU to me is that second best team in the SEC, followed by Georgia, and then we get into the Big 12 and Big 10.
And speaking on those teams, just outside of that top 4, we had all of us had Ohio State and Oklahoma on the outside looking in. I have Oklahoma above Ohio State based on the fact that I trust Jalen Hurts more than I trust Justin Fields. I think, obviously, Ohio State's defense with Chase Young, Aduka, the very, very solid cornerback that they have, going to be a high draft pick. Obviously, they're better, but I think Oklahoma's offense is what makes them special. I think Jalen Hurts, maybe right now, we're talking about Heisman favorites. Maybe Jalen Hurts is the Heisman favorite.
Yes.
Lincoln Riley is an absolute wizard of a play caller. So that's what separates Ohio State and Oklahoma from me. And what separates Oklahoma from the top 4 teams is the fact of their defenses. All of those teams we have in the top 4. Clemson, Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. This season and in the past, for the other 3 teams, and this season for LSU, have exhibited the ability to score a lot of points. But they also all played good, solid defense. Those are 4 of probably maybe the top 15 defenses in the entire country. Oklahoma has the worst pass defense in the entire country. What else do you need to say? So that's the thing that's really, really hindering them. I'm not entirely sure why they can't just play any sort of defense, but they can. It's not as bad maybe as a year ago, but it's still just it's not good.
Hard to watch.
If you love watching shootout, it's Big 12 football.
Yeah.
They're going to score a lot of points. Jalen Hurts so far this season has been excellent throwing the passer or Jalen Hurts has been excellent so far this season throwing the ball. We all know what he can do running the ball wise. He is so powerful, so hard to bring down. And under Lincoln Riley, he's flourished so far this season. They got Trey Sermon. CeeDee Lamb's one of the best receivers in the entire country. This is a good Oklahoma team, and they're going to be able to make a run at the playoff, especially if they win out. If they win out, I think they're going to be in the college football playoff because at the end of the day, Auburn too. Alabama, LSU, and Georgia will have to play each other.
Yeah.
Alabama's going to play LSU, and Georgia will probably play the winner of that game in the in the SEC championship game. So that will all get sorted out. The rest, the likes of Oklahoma, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, even maybe Texas, throw a team like Oregon, Utah, maybe a USC. I don't think so, but maybe those are the teams that we got to be thinking about that might be able to be a team that makes a push into the playoff.
Yeah, and I would not be shocked if the SEC gets 2 teams in. I mean, we have 3 SEC teams in our top 4 right now, and I just think that if Alabama and Georgia are undefeated and one of them loses in the SEC championship, or even if Alabama loses, say, to LSU but then wins the SEC championship, I just think there's scenarios where 2 teams get in, especially if Notre Dame loses.
Yeah, the SEC is definitely the most powerful and the best conference in the country right now. 5 of the teams that we have in the top 10 are from the SEC. Obviously, they have Alabama, Nick Saban, that dynasty that he has going there. So it's going to be a tougher road for all of those teams to make it to the playoff as opposed to Clemson, who's basically the only superstar team, I would say, in the ACC at the moment. Florida State's just completely fallen off the map, and no one else can really match them talent-wise or physical-wise because Miami still isn't quite there yet with Coach Manny Diaz. So I do think Clemson runs the table. I think Alabama gets in, and then I think it's going to be either LSU or Georgia might be able to get in. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not, whether or not they get 2 teams, how it plays out. It's only week 2. I know we're talking playoff. That's kind of the point of the podcast, but it's what we do. So why don't we just talk about Clemson and Alabama right now? We'll talk about Alabama first. Tua Tagovailoa is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't super.
Decent, yeah.
They were. I mean, the dude just drops dimes.
Yeah.
He's really good. I don't think he's as good as Trevor Lawrence, but I think he's the second best quarterback in the entire country.
Yeah.
His anticipation is phenomenal. I think I've already seen differences and growth in him and his ability to read defenses. He's not taking as many gutsy, dumb throws. Like some of the fantastic plays he made. I believe there was one against Louisville in the first week of the season where he was basically turned around and then threw it into the corner of the end zone. I don't see him making that same throw anymore. I think he's grown. I think he's improved. Najee Harris is no joke at running back. Alabama in the trenches is probably the best team in the country. They just reload at defense. They lost probably their best defensive player in Dylan Moses. Haven't really noticed too much because they're Alabama. They're really good. They have the best coach in the entire country. Nick Saban might be the best coach in the history of college football. He probably is. So, I mean, they're number 2, and the reason I have Clemson above them is the fact that they won last year. I know that shouldn't be the thing, but Clemson has Trevor Lawrence coming back. They have Travis Etienne coming back. They have the best wide receiver core in the country. I know everyone's thinking it's Alabama. Jerry Jeudy might be the best wide receiver. However, I think that Clemson goes 3 deep with the likes of T. Higgins, future NFL player. Justin Ross completely broke out in the college football playoff last year. We saw what he and Trevor Lawrence did to that Alabama defense in the national championship. And then they got Amari Rodgers back, who tore his ACL in the spring. Very good slot receiver, son of former USC offensive coordinator and Tennessee national title winning quarterback T. Martin. I think Clemson just barely overtakes them, and that's down to Trevor Lawrence, who hasn't looked all that convincing so far this season. He was my preseason Heisman favorite. He's going to be the number 1 pick in 2 years. It's going to happen. The dude is the most talented quarterback in the country. He's got an absolute cannon for an arm. He's calm under pressure, anticipates balls well. His ball placement is impeccable. But he's thrown some interceptions this year. He hasn't looked great so far. We haven't seen the Trevor Lawrence that we saw in the playoff. However, we haven't needed to.
That's the thing too. I feel like Clemson hasn't played these big teams yet, and they haven't. And like you said, if Trevor Lawrence is playing bad now, or not bad, I'll say subpar to what we're normal to seeing, then Clemson's gonna be. I mean, Clemson's always scary, but Clemson's gonna be even that more scary when they do play teams when they do see probably Bama in the national championship, when they see like a Georgia or even like a LSU in the semifinal. So it'll be the kid is it's unbelievable how much talent he has. It's just gonna be interesting to see how well Dabo and him can flourish this season.
And we talked about Clemson's schedule being pretty easy the rest of the way. Alabama between now and November 9th, when they play LSU, I only see one true test for them. This week they have South Carolina, who is not at the top of the SEC at all.
Obviously, yes, Jake Bentley went down with that injury.
Yeah.
Freshman Ryan Helinski, the brother of the late Tyler Helinski. I believe yesterday was Suicide Prevention Day, so I do think we need to mention that if you're feeling, let down or anything, make sure you guys go and talk to someone, get the help you need. You do have loved ones. But yeah, going back to Alabama, sorry about that, but I did feel like we needed to say something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They have South Carolina this week, then Southern Miss at home the week after, Mississippi after that, who is not good at all. Then their one test between now and November 9th is going at Texas A&M, and then they have Tennessee and Arkansas, who are both toward the bottom of the SEC.
I think Arkansas is actually a decent team. I think they're going to be a team that we see more of. I mean,
You think they sneak in the top 25?
I think they're a team that might maybe for a week or so. I just think that they play too many good teams. But they're an interesting team. They're not going to beat Alabama, but they're a team that might be able to pull off an upset, if you will. Ben Hicks is a talented quarterback, broke all kinds of records at LSU. They got the Nick Starkel kid. Maybe if Ben Hicks isn't playing well, he was a transfer from Texas A&M, got beat up by Kellen Mond. So Arkansas is an interesting team. I think they can pull off an upset right now. They're 1-1. They didn't look great against Ole Miss, but they might be able to pull up an upset. But at the end of the day, we're talking about Alabama, and we're talking about Clemson. Those teams, different level than everybody else right now.
For sure.
And it's down to their consistency. LSU so far, we've seen the offense that they haven't had in previous years, and like I said, I think Joe Burrow, his development is the reason that I think LSU this year can beat Alabama. Will they? I do not think so at this current moment in time. However, that's a long way away.
You can compare it to the old Warriors and Cavs. The Clemson and Bama rivalry will go down as probably one of the biggest college football rivalries we've ever seen. And today, I don't see it ending anytime soon. These teams are set up for success for years to come, and especially this year with quarterbacks Tua and Trevor. That's another quarterback rivalry that we haven't seen in a long time in terms of college football, and a coaching rivalry that we haven't seen in a while between Nick Saban and
Dabo
Swinney. We haven't seen that since Les Miles and Nick Saban.
Yeah, and one closing thing before we go on to a little bit of things about next week. Alabama and Clemson, the reason that they've been able to sustain this level of success is down to their recruiting. Clemson already has signed 6 5-stars in next year's class. Alabama is consistently year in and year out either the number 1 recruiting class in the country. If they're not number 1, they're number 3 or higher. They're number 2 or 3. So that is what really separates them. They just reload. They have 4 first-round picks in a year. What do you know? The next guys that they that replace them are going to be first-round picks in the future. So definitely, I think they're two teams that I'd be very, very surprised if I do not see them in the college football playoff. However, it's college football. We've seen crazy stuff happen all the time. Crazy stuff can and will happen this season. I'm excited to see that. But now we're going to move on to next week, and we're going to talk about the best games of the week. So for me, the game that I'm most intrigued to watch is Iowa State. I think in this game, we're going to get a real picture of how good Iowa is. I think Iowa State, one of the best coached teams in the entire country. Brock Purdy is an absolute baller. He reminds me a lot of he reminds me a lot of a Sam Ehlinger. He's a very similar player. Maybe not the most talented guy in the world, but the guy just wins. He can throw the ball. He can run the ball. He's tough. I think it's going to be a really good game. It's in Ames. Iowa's got to go on the road. I think it's going to be an intense environment. Two really, really well-coached teams are just going to go at it. And I think it's going to be a little bit old-fashioned. I think we're going to see them run the ball. I think it's going to be a physical game. And I think there might be some penalties, even though it's a well-coached game. It's a rivalry. I'm just super, super excited to watch that game. In a weekend that doesn't have a lot of games that really stand out.
Yeah, so as far as my game of the week goes, I'm gonna go with Stanford UCF. Now Stanford coming off the loss to USC, obviously we'll see how they can bounce back from that loss, which they had no business being a part of in any way.
That was Davis Mills' first career start, so career start number 2, we'll have to see how he improves. KJ Costello looks as if he's still gonna be out for a little while longer, so that's going to be something to, watch. But David Shaw, we know how Stanford likes to play football. They like to run the ball. They're going to get downhill. They're going to play good defense, old-fashioned style. I think Stanford's still a good team. I think UCF is a good team. Brandon Wimbush offers a little bit something different than Mackenzie Milton did. Much more of a running threat. Maybe not quite the same passer. But that's definitely an intriguing game because we're going to see what UCF is. We've seen what they were in years past. They beat Auburn in a New Year's Six Bowl a couple years ago. Last year, they weren't the same team, especially after Mackenzie Milton went down with that horrible leg injury. Hopefully, he is able to come back next year. But we're going to see if this UCF team is for real because we can't forget, Stanford did beat a very good Northwestern team in week 1. So Stanford's not a bad team. I don't know. It's this weekend isn't the best. I mean, obviously we got to talk about the ASU game on the road at Michigan State. It's gonna be a real test for the Sun Devils because, like you said, Eno Benjamin going into the season, everyone thought this was gonna be his year. Third in the country last year in rushing. All senior offensive line, 2 seniors on the O-line go down. They get replaced. Running game hasn't looked great against either Kent State and Sacramento State. Now they got to go against probably the best defensive front, maybe the best in the entire country. I know we've been talking about the likes of Utah, Alabama, Clemson, but Michigan State is definitely in that conversation in terms of packing the box, stopping the run, shooting the gaps. And Jaden Daniels is my player to watch because a lot is going to be asked of him in his first true test at this Division I level.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think it's going to be a game where Michigan State controls the clock. It's not many possessions in the game. They win maybe 24-10, something like that. I just don't think that ASU will be able to run the ball very well. The pass protection has not looked good. And then on the defensive end, ASU's secondary has looked pretty good, but the defensive line has sometimes had some issues stopping the run. So I think Michigan State can control the clock and minimize the possessions in this game.
Exactly. ASU's defensive backs are definitely the strength of the team. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be, like you said, I don't think anyone's going to score 30 points. I think it's going to go down to the wire, similarly to the way it went down last year I know you guys weren't there, but Sun Devil Stadium, that was the most electric that I've seen here at my time at ASU. And then I think the last game we probably should touch on is Syracuse and Clemson. I mean, Syracuse always plays Clemson tough, but this year they're just, I don't know. Clemson's so good, and Syracuse just gave up 60 points to Maryland. I think this game might be a blowout.
It will be.
I think Clemson and Trevor Lawrence might have 4 touchdown passes and a rushing touchdown. Travis Etienne could go for 200 yards again. Or I could also maybe see it being a tough game because Clemson, they didn't necessarily look great against Texas A&M.
I think we said before we haven't seen Trevor Lawrence at his best yet this year, and like we said, he hasn't had to be. But I think this is the game that Trevor Lawrence, not necessarily like we've seen him break out before, but this will be his breakout game this season, in my
where
opinion.
he really gets the wheel turning and starts going.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, guys, all right. One final thing to say before we wrap things up here.
I'll just touch on the other primetime game is Oklahoma at UCLA. I think between those
blowout.
I think between those two games, Clemson Syracuse at 4:30, Oklahoma UCLA at 5. I think we can do other stuff with our night starting at 6. I think both of those games will be over after a quarter, 21-0 after one type things.
I will still be watching because I love college football. But, maybe for you more casual fans, you can go to bed early on the East Coast.
Yeah, all I gotta say is watch out for that ASU Michigan State game. Don't be surprised if history repeats itself. ASU wins and upsets Michigan State again. We'll have to see what happens there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, everybody, for joining on this episode of the Playoff Committee. It was a great week in college football last week. It's going to be another great week coming up. Despite, the lack of intriguing games, it's college football. Something crazy is going to happen. There's going to be an upset somewhere. Someone's going to make a one-handed catch. Someone's going to throw a 60-yard bomb. Probably Trevor Lawrence. Maybe Tua Tagovailoa. Let's be real. Probably both of them. But, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. For Chaz Messman.
For Nick Nath.
Ray Belkora.
I will see you guys next time. This is the Playoff Committee. Peace!